came back and the whole damn thing was purple. Like by the time you got back, that's basically you. You leave town for a couple of days, and the Lakers, they're totally unrecognizable by the time you come back.
Yeah, let me tell you something. I was truly off the grid. Like for a couple days, I was without any type of internet access whatsoever.
Killing what you ate, all of that, you know?
It was somewhere between...
A man off the grid.
No, this was not glamping. My family and a few friends of my daughter's, like school friends, we had agreed to do a camping trip around this time. Like, it was actually agreed upon with nobody consulting me, but it was well, much less before anyone asked me, hey, does this happen to conflict with anything you might be doing professionally? Oh, not really, just the beginning of free agency. And, if anyone's been in a relationship, you can be told, hey, it's all right if you don't go, but it's not really all right if you don't go at all.
It's a choice, but it's not a choice. So you were out of cell service.
I made a compromise. I left the trip early, but I went for a couple days. Gorgeous, Big Sur. It's really pretty. I'm not necessarily a camper, so to speak. It's not necessarily my jam, but
not an outdoorsman in the tradition.
No, I like the outdoors. I don't like.
No, but not an outdoorsman.
No.
Yeah. No, it's Manhattan. We've invented indoor beds. It makes a lot of sense. So you come back, and like the whole thing is different.
Oh my God. I mean, like it was as if like time and space reinvented itself when it comes to the Lakers, like in terms of purple and gold universes. I was like, holy hell, what just happened?
Yeah,
what happened?
It was a lot. I on Tuesday's show, I obviously recapped a lot of what they did when free agency opened on Monday, and we're going to talk about some of those moves because the moves that they made on Tuesday obviously are impacted by what they did on Monday and how this all fits together. But the Lakers incredibly active again on Tuesday. 4 players, if you include re-signing Taylor Horton-Tucker. So they commit to 4 roster spots. We're going to talk about all of them right now, and then go back a little bit, Andy, to yesterday and just see how all of this stuff fits together. Because on the one hand, the Lakers have done very good work in terms of using their money on players that can give them value. On the other hand, there are questions about how all this stuff is going to fit together. So let's start with Tuesday's moves, and probably the easiest one to have forecasted, the one that had a Thanosian inevitability to it, Carmelo Anthony joining the Lakers on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, this felt like something that had been in the works for a while. I mean, let's be honest, the Lakers have had this thing in the works for about a decade. They've been trying to get Anthony finally on this team. They've been going at this for so long, even during a time where Kobe and Carmelo were extremely close. Even they said at the time, no, this is not a good idea. This doesn't really make sense. But for this team, I do think it makes sense. You can see what Melo can bring in terms of, having reinvented himself in the last couple of years. He's become much more willing to take on really a role player status. He's
right, because he started when he went to Portland. He started most of those games in his first season, and then this year, we calling this year. This year officially last year. Last year. Okay, so last season then he took really, like you say, a true bench role. So I think he started 3 games out of the 69, and then he played or something like that. And he was very productive in it. It worked out very well.
Yeah, I mean, the deficiencies that have been with Carmelo Anthony, even during his prime, are still there. I mean, he is somebody that you are going to have to, if not cover defensively, because I'm not going to get into this, I'm not sure this team, as currently constructed, is capable of covering for like one guy. Like they're going to have to kind of cover all for each other.
It's going to take a village, and the village is named Anthony Davis and LeBron James. But it's a village.
And Dwight Howard
when he plays. But like
Dwight could very well have a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, that second unit is going to be prolific in some way. It's actually just going to be prolific. It's going to be prolific in scoring points, and prolific in allowing them.
But Melo makes a lot of sense. He's become very dependable dependable in this type of role. He's always been somebody that teammates have just adored, even during periods where he was pretty controversial. He has always been among the more popular players in the league. Everybody knows he and LeBron are extremely close friends. This is a team that has needed shooting. There are issues.
Right, and Melo went 38.5% his first year, and 41% in his second.
Again,
like, this is the guy he has become. Absolutely.
Yeah, there are going to be issues, in the same way there's going to be issues with a lot of these guys we talk about. But Melo makes a lot of sense. You just have to understand he is not that Carmelo Anthony.
Right, and honestly, you don't want him to be, because that guy who really had trouble sticking in the league, was out of the league for a while. In part because he wasn't capable of being a primary scorer anymore, but still thought of himself that way. In this role as a secondary guy, averaging nearly 20 points per 36 minutes, he can still be very productive 20 minutes a night, but he's doing it in very different ways. When he catches it and shoots it, when he gets the ball, thrown to him and he does that, he is very efficient. When he isolates, he's not. And so how he's used in that second unit will be. And it's not inconceivable to me that in the right matchup he might close a game here and there. But primarily as a second unit guy, we don't need to get some of the other stuff. But like as a second unit guy, if he is utilized correctly to where he is not asked to isolate, he should be a very productive member of that. You want to talk about a guy, Andy, who is hungry to win a ring and will do what is asked of him. I think is 1,000% Carmelo Anthony. So big thumbs up for this signing. And I should say, people are bitching at me, Andy, because they don't like my reaction to the Alex Caruso thing, and I'm sure you have some thoughts on it that we'll get to before the end of the show. I can still dislike the Alex Caruso thing and think the Lakers have done a very good job spending their money. I said it last night, I'll say it again tonight. Second guy that they did today, that they picked up, this was an interesting one, and one that I did not see coming. Former Hornets guard Malik Monk. He broke the string of guys who aren't 38 or whatever that they signed. He's just 23 years old, so they found a young dude. He's coming off his best season from a shooting standpoint in Charlotte. 41% of his threes last year, well beyond his career numbers. And so I think the big question with Malik Monk, Andy, is whether or not what he did last year is an aberration, in the sense that Kyle Kuzma's rookie three-point shooting numbers turned out to be a little bit of the exception to the rule, or is that the natural progression of a young player who scored very well in Kentucky, or maybe the influence of having a better point guard around him like LaMelo Ball. And certainly he's going to have plenty of people to set him up for open three-pointers in LA, between Westbrook, Kendrick Nunn, who we'll get to, LeBron, Anthony Davis. He's going to have guys who can do that. I'm not entirely sure where he fits in when it's all said and done, but for $1.5 million or whatever it turns out, I think it's a great pickup.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a flyer. The SB Nation Hornets blog at the Hive, they do a really good job. I was reading a piece about this after Malik Monk, because to be totally honest, he was not somebody that I had even considered as a possibility, because I thought he'd be way too expensive, and they had said
absolutely.
Even taking into account his inconsistencies last season and during the 4 years he was in Charlotte as a lottery pick. He was their 11th overall pick in 2017. They had pegged his market value as somewhere between 8 to 15. So regardless of how this turns out, I mean, it's a steal just in terms of having the opportunity. Like you said before, his 40% three-point shooting is definitely an anomaly in terms of what he's done in his career. And it'll be really interesting to see if that's something to build on, or if it's similar to what the Lakers saw last season with Dennis Schroeder and that one season in OKC that turned out to be the exception that proved the rule. Like Malik Monk, obviously there's a lot of theoretical, if nothing else, room to grow. He is very young, and at the risk of sounding disparaging, he's been part of an organization that's often had its head up its own ass. So you can't blame him if
and also
he hasn't been properly nurtured.
People underrate how difficult that is to do. to stick your head up your own butt.
That is, it's difficult to do, and you got to want it.
Challenging. The funny thing about
that being said, though, really quick though.
Sure, go ahead.
That being said, it does give me a bit of pause that a team like Charlotte, that is in a rebuilding stage and is looking to grow young collectively, would be as indifferent towards a lottery pick of their own coming off basically a career best season. There can be a lot of different explanations for it, and I've been reading a bit that he had some issues, coach, all that different stuff. But it is something to be thinking about and looking more into, as Malik Monk is now on a radar more.
Right. The difference is, though, just because the number that Charlotte would have had to pay to keep him is far different than any other team. So, I mean, I think that that the cost benefit goes there to some degree. But the part that I think is so fascinating about this is essentially a make good deal. Like, if he plays, he's coming to LA with the idea that he can play well, reestablish a better market value, and go, sign a real contract somewhere else that won't be the Lakers. But, the rules about 1 year dues and all this kind of stuff. With the way that the team is being reconstructed, I don't know how much he's even going to play. Like, in theory, he is the two guard coming off the bench, and splits time in the backcourt with THT sliding to the three. I mean, there are lineup combinations obviously where he can play, but Monday they signed Wayne Ellington, and so it's hard to play both of those guys. Like, so and we don't have to debate that right now. There's plenty of time to debate how these rotation questions are going to come out, but it's one of the themes I think of this roster that they've put together, is that while there are a lot of really good players and good values, figuring out how the pieces fit together, with some exception. Kendrick Nunn, who we'll get to here in a second, makes a ton of sense in exactly the spot that he's in. Dwight Howard, it's like, okay, that's easy to figure out. But some of these other guys, like, whether it's Bazemore, Ellington, Malik Monk, how they use Ariza, I think for a lot of it's interesting.
It is. Oh God, it's going to be fascinating.
They're going to be an endlessly fascinating team this year.
I think for a lot of these backcourt guys, it's going to start coming down to who hurts us least defensively, because a lot of their skill sets are pretty similar, not necessarily redundant, but similar.
And for Monk, who is a more, albeit very inconsistent, a more dynamic scorer, obviously, than Wayne Ellington, he is, unless this shooting turns out to be the real deal and he can, do it on the volume and all that kind of stuff, he is not the kind of guy who is a respected gravity-inducing shooter that Wayne Ellington is. And so, Ellington is not a good defender. Monk is a terrible defender. So,
right. And Wayne Ellington, if nothing else, is experienced enough to know where he's supposed to go.
Sure,
we covered him when he was with the Lakers that one stint. Great dude, great locker room guy, very popular with the team. He established veteran.
All right, so let's take a break and we'll do Kendrick Nunn and then Talen Horton-Tucker, which was a big deal to bring him back, especially in the wake of losing Alex Caruso on Monday. The Lakers bat 500 there, I guess, with their own free agents. They do bring back THT. We'll do that. We'll do him. We'll do Kendrick Nunn next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. Bars covered in 100% chocolate, soft, easy to chew. Great, by the way, if you happen to be on a camping trip in Big Sur with no Wi-Fi, trying to build up the energy for discovering everything the Lakers did over 48 hours. Because I'll tell you, you need a full, hearty stomach, a lot of energy, because they did a lot. Built Bars, they are healthy. They're great for health-conscious people. Low sugar, low calorie, high protein, high fiber. They're great for keto diets. Awesome taste, whether you're talking about the 12 original flavors like raspberry, coconut almond, salted caramel, banana bread, new flavors like cherry barcia, lemon almond cheesecake, cookies and cream. They're perfect for somebody who doesn't want to be bored eating the same thing over and over. Great taste combinations. So go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, you get 15% off your first order. Again, the promo code LOCKED15, 15% off at BuiltBar.com.
I'm I'm Barbara. I'm a CalCoast member. I was in a tough place. I had a lot of credit card debt. That was 6 years ago. My sister, when I told her my story, she says, we're going to CalCoast Credit Union and we're getting your act together. CalCoast has changed my life. And ever since then, it's been such a wonderful experience.
Get an affordable mortgage with a zero closing cost home loan from California Coast Credit Union and get the CalCoast Advantage. Visit calcoastcu.org to apply. Some restrictions apply. Equal housing lender.
So there was a lot of question as to, wait a minute, where's that big mid-level, I use big in air quotes, the biggest one they had, the taxpayer mid-level $5.9 million a year that the Lakers could offer. They hadn't seemed to use it. All these deals coming down the pike, all of them were one-year deals until Tuesday afternoon, and the Lakers go 2 years, $10 million player option for the second season for former Miami point guard Kendrick Nunn. He is actually one of the easiest guys to slot in, Andy. Now, we just talked about that with Monk and Ellington and some of the, the Bazemore, that kind of log jam and that shooting guard, sort of the 2-3 stuff. Kendrick Nunn, that's easy. He's Russell Westbrook's backup, and a credible guy in the games that, the 10 games or whatever, 15 games that Russ might miss over the course of the season, whether because he's dinged up, because they're protecting his health or whatever it might be. I love this pickup. He's somebody that, when you kind of target at the beginning of free agency, like, I wonder if they could squeeze him in as a backup. Lakers fans probably remember Andy this season when he lit them up for 27 points, 5 of 6 from 3-point range. He's a quality offender. He can get you buckets off the bench. He can obviously stretch the floor a little bit, 38%. In terms of $5 million backup point guards, I got no problem with this one either.
Yeah, he's another guy that he was not on my radar at all, even though all the signs have been pointing towards Miami letting him go. He has not been on my radar at all, because similar to Malik Monk, I didn't think there was a chance they could afford him. Like, he
did
really
reportedly take, I think it was the Knicks offered him more, and he apparently, wanted to come to LA, better shot at winning a title, whatever it might be.
He's actually had a taste of the finals at a very young age. He's been a part of that. He was part of that Miami team that the Lakers beat in the finals in 2020. He's had an interesting route with them in that he's been in and out of the rotation both during the regular season and especially during the playoffs with Kyle Lowry arriving via sign and trade to the Heat. His role ends up less defined, I guess, less important than even it had been during, those inconsistent periods. But for the Lakers, he brings a really interesting dimension. Like Malik Monk we talked about before, I think his defense will basically set the ceiling for how important a player he can be on this team.
To be fair, he is his metrics with Miami, he is not a negative defensive guy. He's just not a positive. He's fine on that side. The Heat are a little bit better offensively when he plays, a little bit worse defensively. But you go to the B-ball index guys and Cranges basketball, and you look at some of the numbers he's put out. He's not a liability on that side of the way that Malik Monk had over his career.
Sure, that being said, though, he's not a stopper. Nunn is more likely to lose time in the fourth quarter because of his defense than become a defensive staple. That being, based on what we've seen, that being said, he has an opportunity, though, because if he starts picking up his defense, like if he starts turning it into something where, at the very least, he's not a problem defensively, or if he's not seen as a weakness, he could have an opportunity to start establishing himself more in these important moments.
What you're talking about is basically fundamental. Because Westbrook is a big enough guard. Obviously, you can theoretically not. You're not playing a bunch of miniatures if you play Kendrick Nunn and Westbrook together. The difference is, you're looking for somebody to protect Westbrook in a way that you weren't necessarily looking for somebody to protect Dennis Schroeder, or go back 2 years, Avery Bradley, or all these different combinations that the Lakers had throughout the playoffs and other stuff. It's just different. And again, Caruso is really good at that one thing. So which of these guys is going to, in what lineup configuration, is going to stick. Like if you ask me right now what my closing lineup probably is, I think it's Russ, Bazemore, LeBron, Trevor Ariza, and AD. And I think as a starting lineup, I think you throw Gasol in there right now. You take Ariza out, Ariza comes off the bench. But like all of this stuff is very fluid, and it could take most of the season to figure out how all of this works. And I agree with you, defense really is going to be the thing.
Yeah.
But you know, as a
None though could be a very important guy with this team.
It's a perfect pickup for
Sure,
what they
but I'm
needed
just
to
talking
do.
about you because we've talked a lot about leading into free agency, the idea of these closing units, because the Lakers had landed on units that they really liked pretty consistently to close out games. LeBron, AD, KCP, Caruso, then usually pick a fifth guy, but they had some pretty good options with that. If you're talking about the Lakers looking to get back into a game in the fourth quarter, Kendrick Nunn could actually be a really important guy there.
Could be.
Because that ability to score.
They have no shortage of ways to try to score points this year. I mean, you and I say what you will about the wisdom of some of the things the Lakers have and haven't done this offseason, the Westbrook trade generally, all of this stuff, and like none of us knows how any of this is going to turn out. We can all basically see the risks. We can all basically see the rewards. We asked them to lean into offense a little bit more, and Lord knows they've done that. They're going to be a team that is capable of scoring more points next year in more ways than they were last year and the year before. There's no question about that. There's just they're also going to allow more points than they did in those years.
The structure of this team is really going to be a test of just how good a defensive coach Frank Vogel is, just how good his systems have been. Because we've talked about the last couple of years how it's looked like it doesn't really matter who's on the floor. The Lakers have been able to remain one of the elite defenses, even during periods where LeBron and AD were hurt. But those teams had more good defenders at their disposal to
Two-way guys,
just
Kuzma,
to try to keep it more patchwork
KCP,
until you figure it out.
Exactly, and that makes a difference.
Yeah, it does make a difference. I mean, but
Guys with length, with switchability, with all that kind of stuff.
Flip side is this team, though. This team might make it so that becomes less important as they learn to start coalescing more defensively.
Right. It's just there's a lot of either or. Whereas KCP was one of their better shooters and a good defender. Kuzma, in theory, was one of their better. Last year was one of their better shooters and one of their better offensive reserves, and turned himself into a plus defender. Less so with Caruso in terms of the offense, but he still shot 40% from three-point range, front-loaded. I'm not here to stick up for Caruso shooting, and certainly not in the playoffs.
The biggest problem Caruso had, I think, on balance offensively, is he wasn't willing to do make shots.
But the volume, for all the talk of Caruso and this and that, the volume that he had from three last year was virtually identical to Kent Bazemore. So it's like the excitement over the thing that you haven't seen is always there versus the thing that you have. The last guy, before we get to THT and just talk about this, because this is really a big deal that they brought back THT, and it means a lot in terms of how all of these things that we're talking about shakes out. Can we stop for a second and just talk about how much more interesting this team has become over? I mean, I don't know it's going to work, but man alive, like 3 weeks ago, a month ago, it was like, well, they could kind of sort of run it back. Maybe you find one more shooter, whatever, and then you just sit there and you spend the entire season going, man, I hope LeBron and AD don't get hurt in the playoffs, because ultimately, like this year, though, we have got some things to look at during the regular season. Like, this is going to be fun and interesting.
There's only one person on the planet who does not find this team interesting, and that's Dennis Schroeder.
Yes. Dennis Schroeder and his former agent. Now, do you think Schroeder is firing his agent, or is his agent firing Schroeder? Both could be true.
Look, it's hard to say. I'm not even sure I know who reps Dennis Schroeder.
It's not a household name.
Schroeder seems to me like somebody who could be very difficult to convince. Hey, take this
Alex
offer. It's the best one.
Saraxis, I believe is his name.
I have no idea if that guy's a good agent. I have no idea if he's a bad agent. I have no idea if he's been whispering all the wrong things in Schroeder's ear. All I can say is Schroeder seems like a difficult guy to get off a stance.
Let's talk about THD because big deal. The Lakers brought him back 3 years, $32 million. We'll do that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by RockAuto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models out there, it is impossible to stock all the parts you need in a traditional chain storefront. And why would you spend 30%, 50%, 100% more for the exact same auto parts at a chain store, dummy, or a new car dealership when you can get it all for way less at RockAuto.com? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump, $353 from a chain store. That is highway robbery. You know how I know that, Brian? It's $216 at Rock Auto. RockAuto.com, they're a family business. They've been serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Whether you're working with a classic or a daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. So go to RockAuto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck, right Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com.
This episode is brought to you by Patron Tequila. Whether you're hanging with friends by the water or in the backyard, celebrate the refreshing taste of summer with a Patron Paloma. The perfect way to enjoy Patron is responsibly. Handcrafted in Mexico. Imported by the Patron Spirits Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Tequila, 40% alcohol by volume. To learn more, visit patrontequila.com.
3 years, $32 million to bring back Taylor Horton Tucker. Very, I think, reasonable deal for everybody involved. And it's a great payday for THD because, love the potential of what he can bring. His age, obviously, he's still 20, right? Or has he turned 21?
He is going to be 21 about a month into the season.
Okay, so he's still 20 years old. He is obviously the closest thing the Lakers have to a youth movement, and Malik Monk, I suppose. But it's a great payday
Monk
for
will be
THD.
buying him beer.
That's right. It's a great payday for THD, and it's a smart move for the Lakers, who need his playmaking. They need his ability to put the ball on the floor and to score that way. And hopefully he grows into a better shooter and a better defender. He's actually one of the reasons, Andy. I wonder how much Malik Monk is going to play. But anyway, back to THD. I was very excited when I saw this news come down. The only thing that had bugged me about it was the timing, because I had just finished doing a free agency update and did not have that news yet. So I had to do more work. But other than that, I was very pleased.
Look, it's great news for the Lakers. You and I have both been really high on THT's potential. What makes this, though, really interesting to watch is the urgency that's been cranked up. Like, he needs to be ready now. THT has shown flashes, and at times he's been a really, really good scorer attacking at the rim. He has shown signs of being an excellent playmaker.
Well, I planned on,
but he's also never been a rotation mainstay, somebody with a lot of responsibility.
I planned on recording from work to the gas station back home every time I get gas, but I need my phone to record my gas mileage. So, this video is just gonna have to be titled "Work to Gas Station." I'm not gonna sacrifice tracking the gas mileage and my miles, because that's how I determine when it's time to change my oil. It's also how I track vehicle performance. So I'm gonna buy a pen and paper type thing that I can keep in here, so I can just write down the numbers and then manually punch them in when I get home.
My point is, though, they're not doing this.
Well, I'm saying there is both. I think there is an element of looking at the future and seeing a guy that could be very important.
John
But,
definitely like someone who's gonna go to
they
the gas
need it to be
station.
good now.
There's no
They need
denying.
it to produce.
You guys are about to see a cool thing about the view, which is where the gas tank is located.
Guys like Wayne
The gas
Ellington
tank is on the
and
right
Bazemore
side.
and Malik Monk and all that stuff are keeping them on the floor. That's a bad sign.
So my gas tank is on the right side. So
And I don't
all
think
these
it'll
open
happen.
pumps
think it's
I can go
deflected.
to.
I don't
because
expect
of
to become a 42%
my,
differentiator
vehicle.
next year, but
So,
you know the skill set
I
that he
could just
showed
get
last
gas
year,
right
and I
here.
think the willingness to become a better defender. I think they look at him, and I think we talked about this. Like, they use Kuz as a template.
Oh yeah.
Kyle Kuzma's a
All right.
terrible defender.
Well,
He's not in the
let's
league,
pump
but he
gas.
cared.